And I didn't hear very much more about it. I think I do remember when I first heard about it, the only thing that really impressed me was that...
In 1976, Jenny Agutter faced her biggest challenge on set. Her green costume in Logan's Run was basically see-through fabric with 2 chains. That's it. No real coverage. The outfit was so flimsy it nearly ruined filming. During one scene, she had to dive underwater with Michael York. The moment she hit the water, disaster struck. What happened next would become one of Hollywood's most awkward filming moments. Jenny Agutter was born on December 20th, 1952, in a small English town called Taunton. It was one of the coldest winters in British history. Her father, Derek Agutter, worked as an entertainment officer in the British Army. Her mother, Catherine, had Irish roots. Jenny was raised Roman Catholic, but she didn't stay in one place for long. Her father's military work kept the family moving. While most British kids were settling into quiet, post-war neighborhoods, Jenny's life was anything but stable. Before she turned 3, the family was off to Singapore. She remembered the heat, the colors, and the noise. Then came Cyprus. Political tension filled the air. After that, Malaysia, right after it became independent. In each country, Jenny picked up new sights, sounds, and customs. This moving around gave her something most children never had: the ability to adapt fast. That skill would later shape her acting career. When Jenny was just 8, her parents sent her to boarding school in England. It wasn't just any school. It was Elmhurst Ballet School in Farnborough. Life there started early, with stretching drills at 6:30 every morning. Then came academic classes, then ballet. Hours and hours of dancing. Her feet bled, her muscles ached. But she kept going. Even though she knew she'd never become a top ballerina, she loved the challenge. The teachers were strict. If your foot wasn't turned out properly, you'd get a ruler to the leg. Jenny got used to it. She even became a prefect, despite being one of the most mischievous girls in school. Midnight feasts, rule-breaking. Yet the school trusted her to lead. In 1964, when Jenny was just 11, everything changed. A casting agent from Walt Disney Productions came to the school. They were looking for a dancer to play a young girl in a film about the Royal Danish Ballet. Jenny didn't expect anything, but when she auditioned, something clicked. It wasn't her technique, they said it was her face. It lit up on camera. She got the part. The film was called Ballerina. It was shot partly in Copenhagen and became her first real experience on a professional set. Jenny danced, acted, and got her first taste of life in front of the camera. That same year, she landed her first big movie role. She was cast in East of Sudan, a British adventure film set during an uprising in 1884. Jenny played a Sudanese girl named Aswa. The movie wasn't a blockbuster, but it mattered. It gave her a real role in a real studio production. She acted alongside major stars like Anthony Quayle and Sylvia Sims. Every day, makeup artists darkened her skin to match the role. She even learned a few lines in a fake Sudanese language. The whole experience was surreal. It was filmed at Shepperton Studios during school holidays. When the film came out, Jenny's face was suddenly on cinema screens. From there, things snowballed. In 1965, she appeared on a beloved children's show called Jackanory, where she read stories to kids on camera. It was simple, but powerful. She wasn't playing a character this time, she had to be herself. That same year, she took on something much harder. She played Hedvig in Henrik Ibsen's The Wild Duck for a BBC series called Play of the Month. She was just 12, playing a tragic role in a psychological drama. The material was heavy. The emotions were deep. But Jenny handled it. She didn't just memorize lines. She felt them. By 1966, she was back in front of the camera for Ballerina, Part 2. Around this time, she also played Linda Frazier in A Man Could Get Killed, and then a haunting role in Gates to Paradise, directed by Polish legend Andrzej Wajda. That film was dark. It explored a twisted version of the Children's Crusade. Jenny was only 15, but the role dealt with betrayal, forbidden love, and manipulation. It was nothing like typical teenage roles, but Jenny had already left the typical behind. In 1968, Jenny got a small role in a big Hollywood film. She appeared in Star, a lavish musical about the life of stage actress Gertrude Lawrence, starring Julie Andrews. Jenny played Lawrence's daughter. It was uncredited, but it mattered. The movie was huge, costing over $14 million, and being on that set gave her a glimpse of Hollywood. She watched how big productions worked. It made an impression that would stay with her for years. While her acting career was growing fast, her school life stayed strict. Elmhurst didn't celebrate her film work. In fact, they almost resented it. Jenny once said she came back excited after filming with Disney, and the school knocked it out of her. The rules were clear. She could only audition if the school thought she was a perfect fit. They didn't want her wasting time or risking rejection. This meant Jenny was constantly juggling two very different worlds. One day, she was being pampered on a film set. The next, she was being scolded for not pointing her toes. But it was in 1968 that her life really changed. She was cast as Roberta, Bobby, in The Railway Children for BBC television. The timing was tricky. Jenny was still in school, so she could only film during holidays. Her life wasn't exactly normal either. Because of her father's job in the British Army, she had grown up all over: Singapore, Cyprus, Malaysia, before finally settling in a boarding school. Maybe that's why she felt so connected to Bobby, a girl whose life was constantly changing. She didn't have any formal acting training. Everything she learned on set, but she absorbed fast. And by 16, she was working non-stop. In the span of a year, she filmed The Railway Children, I Start Counting, and Walkabout. It was Walkabout that would become the most controversial. Shot in Australia in 1969, the movie required her to film a nude swimming scene. She was just 16. Nicholas Roeg, the director, wanted the scene to feel natural and innocent. Jenny was hesitant, but she trusted him. There was no big crew, no lights, just a quiet camera in the distance. The movie wasn't even based on a full script. It was improvised from a 14-page outline. That scene, which she agreed to do with innocence in mind, would later haunt her. Years later, it caused legal issues due to shifting laws, and she admitted the scene was exploited online in ways she could have never imagined. After filming Walkabout, she returned to play Bobby again, this time in the 1970 film version directed by Lionel Jeffries. By then, she was nearly 17 and almost said no, thinking she might be too old for the role. But she took it, and that performance became one of the most beloved in British cinema. More than 50 years later, in 2022, she returned to that world once again in The Railway Children Return, this time playing the grown-up version of herself, while Sheridan Smith played her daughter. In 1971, Jenny starred in The Snow Goose with Richard Harris. She played Fritha, a quiet but emotionally deep role set against the marshlands of Essex. The movie was poetic, with music by Carl Davis and haunting visuals. That same year, she won an Emmy for her performance. She was only 18. That Emmy made it clear Jenny Agutter wasn't just a child star anymore. But fame during those years wasn't easy. Jenny was growing up in front of millions. She had worked with Julie Andrews in Star when she was just 14. She felt like she barely knew what she was doing at the time. She missed out on a normal life. She didn't go to a traditional school. She didn't have the usual teenage experiences. One moment, she was the sweet, innocent girl in Victorian dress. The next, she was a naked teenager swimming through the outback, completely exposed. That contrast pushed her to make a tough decision. By 1971, she didn't want to keep doing the same kinds of roles. She wanted to break out of the child star mold. Instead of chasing big movie offers, she turned toward the stage. Most actors her age would have taken the money. Jenny took a risk. She hadn't studied at RADA or LAMDA. She had no formal theater training, but she believed that the stage could give her the serious acting experience she needed. In 1974, at just 21, she joined the National Theater and landed the role of Miranda in The Tempest, directed by Peter Hall. She played alongside Sir John Gielgud, one of the greatest actors in theater history. The pressure was intense. She had to rehearse 6 days a week, from morning to evening. There were special movement classes, Shakespearean verse training, complex staging. Most actresses around her had years of formal training. Jenny didn't. She still got the part, beating out 86 others, including 37 graduates from top drama schools. Peter Hall said she had an intuitive rhythm for Shakespeare's lines that no amount of training could teach. Gielgud took her under his wing. He watched over her, helped her through the tough rehearsals. When she struggled, he whispered, "Don't worry, dear. If I see you are sinking, I will throw you a line." And he meant it. He stayed after rehearsals to coach her on voice, breath, timing. He even left handwritten notes in her dressing room with tips and corrections. It was like having a private masterclass from one of the best in the world. When The Tempest finally opened in February 1974, critics noticed. Some thought her performance was too controlled, but others saw the genius in her subtle approach. She wasn't trying to impress. She was trying to be real. The play sold out nearly every night, running for 67 shows and making over £178,000, which would be worth millions today. In 1974, Jenny Agutter packed her bags and left everything behind in Britain. She was just 21 years old. By then, she had already spent 10 years in the film industry. She had starred in Walkabout, The Railway Children, and even won an Emmy for The Snow Goose. In the UK, she had fame, steady work, and respect. But she wanted more. She wanted to make it in Hollywood. And unlike many British actors who flew in for 1 or 2 projects, she didn't treat it like a visit. She moved there, she committed. It was risky. She knew that. Hollywood was tough, and she was starting all over again. 2 years later, in 1976, she landed her breakthrough. She got the role of Jessica 6 in Logan's Run, a big-budget sci-fi film set in the future where no one is allowed to live past 30. The movie cost about $7 to $8 million to make, a massive budget for that time. Her character helped rebels escape death in a world obsessed with beauty and youth. It was nothing like her old British dramas. She was now acting next to Michael York, wearing futuristic costumes and being part of a genre that was bold, wild, and full of flashing lights and disco-inspired visuals. She was 23, and suddenly, she was part of something huge. But it wasn't all glamorous. The costume she had to wear for most of the film became a daily nightmare. It was green, barely there, and held together by 2 thin chains. That was it. No sides, no real coverage, just sheer fabric that barely held in place. Every time she moved, it felt like the whole thing might fall apart. Between takes, crew members were constantly adjusting it. One wrong move, and everything could come loose. She later said it was fairly embarrassing, and that wasn't an exaggeration. Things got even worse during one particular scene, an underwater escape shot. Agutter and York had to dive into water and swim for their lives. But the moment she hit the water, the costume started slipping. The chains couldn't handle the weight and movement. Crew members panicked. People weren't watching the performance. They were watching the costume, just hoping it wouldn't fall off. They had to stop the scene, reset, fix it, and try again. Every take made the costume weaker. The tension was constant. Even York admitted how tough it was for her to stay focused with all that going on. And yet, despite the stress, Agutter kept going. That same year, she didn't just work in Hollywood, she also returned to British cinema. She starred in The Eagle Has Landed, a World War II thriller with Michael Caine, Donald Sutherland, and Robert Duvall. That movie had a $6 million budget and told the story of a plot to kidnap Winston Churchill, a stable girl in a dark psychological drama. This wasn't a safe role. It demanded real emotional pain, intense scenes, and full-body vulnerability. She didn't hold back. Many actresses would have said no to the nude scenes and raw psychological exposure, but Agutter leaned into it. The result? She won a BAFTA for Best Supporting Actress. It was more than an award. It was a statement. She wasn't the little girl from the Railway Children anymore. She had stepped into adult roles with fearless confidence. And the film itself made waves, getting Oscar nominations for both Richard Burton and Peter Firth, while winning Golden Globes too. With just a $4 million budget, Equus became a landmark in art house cinema and a turning point in her career. 4 years later, in 1981, she proved again that she didn't fit in any box. In An American Werewolf in London, she played Nurse Alex Price, who cares for a tourist slowly turning into a monster. The film mixed horror and comedy in a way no one had seen before, and studios didn't even want to touch it at first. But Agutter brought warmth and calm to the chaos. Her scenes with David Naughton gave the film a strange tenderness. The movie made history by winning the first-ever Oscar for Best Makeup, thanks to Rick Baker's wild werewolf transformations. And Agutter? She became a cult favorite all over again. The hospital where they filmed, Chiswick Maternity, had been shut down years earlier but was still used for movies. Students were living in it. During shooting, they'd come outside to grab food from the catering trucks. That kind of mix, strange, personal, unpredictable, fit the film's mood perfectly. And Agutter knew it too. Years later, she joked that between her innocent earlier roles and now these edgy ones, she'd become every viewer's perfect fantasy. That same year, she flew to Australia to film The Survivor. It was a supernatural thriller where she played Hobbs, a woman mysteriously connected to a deadly airplane crash. The film came exactly 10 years after her breakout role in Walkabout, which was also filmed in Australia. It felt like a full-circle moment. But now, she wasn't the teenage newcomer. She was the star. The production created buzz in Adelaide with a massive crash set built just for the movie. In one of its most haunting moments, Agutter's character stands near children playing in a schoolyard, just before a 747 falls from the sky. The film featured heavy names: Robert Powell, Joseph Cotton, even Tim Rice. Agutter's role carried the emotional core, and she got nominated for Best Actress at the AACTA Awards. Her performance proved she wasn't just taking risks, she was leading them. But she wasn't done yet. In the same stretch of months, she took on Othello. Not just any Othello, but a nearly 4-hour Shakespeare adaptation filmed like a theatrical stage play. She played Desdemona, full of grace, strength, and sorrow. The kind of role that demands precision. The camera came close. Every whisper mattered. Every breath had to land. She trained with Shakespearean voice coach Cicely Berry to get the rhythm just right. It was filmed at Ealing Studios with William Marshall as Othello and Ron Moody as Iago. She was credited as Jennifer A. Agutter in the final credits, a small nod to the seriousness of the project. This wasn't Hollywood flash. This was classical muscle. And somehow, in that same incredible year, she starred in Amy, a drama where she led the whole film. It was the end of a whirlwind era that began when she moved to the United States at just 21 in 1974. From then until 1981, she packed in everything. Mainstream hits, cult classics, Shakespeare, thrillers, and dramas. 5 major projects, 3 continents, all in 1 year. In January 1982, the National Society of Film Critics gave her a Special Achievement Award just for that. She had done what few actors ever pull off: real range, real risk, and real rewards. In 1981, Jenny Agutter's career took a sharp turn. She had already made a name for herself in both British and American cinema, but An American Werewolf in London changed things. Playing Nurse Alex Price wasn't just another role, it stamped her name into horror history. Even as she returned to the UK in the later part of the decade, the genre never really left her. In 1987, she starred in Dark Tower, a supernatural horror set in a cursed skyscraper. It wasn't a box office smash, but it earned a cult following. Then, in 1990, she showed up in Child's Play 2 as Joanne Simpson. That role proved she could still bring weight to commercial horror. During the same years, she was also doing Shakespeare with the BBC. One minute, she was chasing ghosts. The next, she was reciting lines from King Lear. That kind of range is rare. But while her career kept evolving, her personal life was about to take a totally unexpected turn. In 1989, she decided to visit an arts festival in Bath. She was 37, had spent over a decade in Los Angeles, and wasn't looking for anything other than a good cultural event. But that's where she met Johan Tam, a Swedish hotelier who had no idea she was famous. He wasn't from the film world. He was managing one of Britain's most luxurious hotels. Their meeting was quiet. No red carpet. No press, just 2 strangers connecting over conversation. And that made all the difference. Jenny later said Johan didn't recognize her, and that was refreshing. After years of people seeing only her roles, he wanted to see her. They weren't chasing anything. They weren't trying to impress each other. And that's why it worked. Within a year, things moved quickly. On August 4th, 1990, they got married in Oxfordshire. It was an elegant ceremony. Jenny wore a long-sleeved lace gown, her hair pulled into a classic chignon. Johan looked sharp in his suit. The wedding was photographed by Terry Fincher, but even with the camera clicks, it felt private and grounded, far from the noise of Hollywood. 4 months later, on Christmas Day 1990, Jenny gave birth to their son, Jonathan. She was 38. She later admitted she had considered having a child on her own during her Hollywood years, but she knew she wouldn't manage without support. Now, the timing felt right. Still, it wasn't all smooth. She said, "They don't tell you that. The moment you're pregnant, your life is taken over." Everything changed. Her work, her priorities, her entire rhythm. And she embraced it. Jonathan grew up to become a Cambridge-educated doctor, and Jenny found joy in things that had nothing to do with scripts or film sets, family dinners, theater nights, just being together. But none of this meant she left acting behind. In the 1990s, she returned full-time to British screens. She played roles in everything from Red Dwarf to The Buccaneers. She became a familiar face in British television again, no longer chasing Hollywood leads, but focusing on the work that fit her new life. Even before this, she had already proven her range on stage. In 1982 and 1983, she joined the Royal Shakespeare Company. She played Alice in Arden of Faversham, Regan in King Lear, and Fontenelle in Lear. Later, in 1995, she traveled to Tokyo with the RSC, performing Love's Labour's Lost. These weren't easy roles, but she never chased comfort. She also reached Broadway, performing in Breaking the Code opposite Derek Jacobi during the 1987-88 season. The play told the story of Alan Turing, and Jenny played Pat Green. It wasn't just a big moment for her career. It was proof she could handle serious drama at an international level. And during those same years in Los Angeles, she volunteered with actors like Ian McKellen and Timothy Dalton, teaching Shakespeare to kids in Watts. Fame had never turned her cold. And then came the moment that brought everything full circle. In 2000, she returned to The Railway Children. But this time, she wasn't the child. She played the mother. It had been 30 years since she first starred as Bobby. Now, she was on the other side of the story. And in 2022, more than 50 years after that first role, she returned again, this time playing Bobby as a grandmother in The Railway Children Return. Few actors carry a single role across 5 decades. Jenny did, not because she had to, but because the story, like her, had grown. When Jenny Agutter took on the role of Tessa Phillips in the hit BBC series Spooks in 2002, most people didn't expect her character to explode like it did. Tessa wasn't just another agent. She had been in MI5 for over 20 years. She was tough, cold, and often unpleasant, but always direct. At first, she seemed like just another supporting figure. But everything changed in Series 2. Viewers were shocked when they learned Tessa had been faking agents and stealing money from the system. Then, it got even darker. She came back running a private security firm and sold MI5 secrets to a drug cartel. One of those betrayals led to the death of an informant who had grown close to one of the main agents. Before vanishing, she left behind a smug video message mocking her former boss. It was cold, calculated, and unforgettable. Agutter's performance as a traitor was chilling and brilliant, and it helped Spooks become one of Britain's most gripping shows. 2 years later, in 2004, she took on a completely different challenge. This time, it was the Alan Clark Diaries on BBC 4. Agutter played Jane Clark, the wife of controversial politician Alan Clark, played by John Hurt. The role made her nervous because Jane was a real person, still alive at the time. But Agutter felt a strange connection. Both she and Jane grew up in military families and went to boarding school. Jane had married Alan at just 16 and moved into Saltwood Castle, a huge, art-filled mansion. But her life was far from a fairy tale. Alan had affairs, scandalous ones, with a judge's wife and both of her daughters. That story made headlines. But Jane didn't fall apart. She threw plates at him, cursed him, and still stayed with him for 41 years until he died in 1999, aged 71. When asked how she coped, Jane simply said, "If you bed people of below-stairs class, they will go to the papers." Agutter captured all of Jane's quiet strength and biting wit in a way that made the role unforgettable. Then came her most beloved character of all, Sister Julienne in Call the Midwife, starting in 2012. The show became a huge hit, and Agutter has been there from the start. She based her performance on a real nun who once cared for her sick mother. When Agutter asked how she got through hard days, the nun said, "You just get on." That phrase stayed with her. Sister Julienne became the heart of the show. She was calm, wise, and gentle, but she wasn't afraid to change. At first, she didn't support birth control, but later, she saw a prostitute who needed help and asked one of the nurses to get her contraception. That moment showed how the character could grow and adapt. There were also little moments, like her quiet joy while watching a movie in a crowded cinema, that made viewers feel the depth beneath her serious exterior. Agutter brought warmth and authority to the role for over a decade. Even in her 70s, Agutter hasn't lost her edge. She's still as bold as ever. That free-spirited streak goes back to 1971, when she filmed Walkabout at just 16 years old. One scene involved skinny dipping in the outback, something too daring for American audiences, who had it cut from the final version. But she never saw it as shocking. That moment shaped how she approached all her roles: natural, honest, and unashamed. In later films like Logan's Run, Equus, and An American Werewolf in London, she wasn't afraid of nudity or complex themes. She once joked that her mix of innocence and sensuality made her perfect fantasy fodder. Even now, she still swims nude and embraces nature, finding peace in things that made others uncomfortable. But not all of her moments have been met with applause. In 2019, she sparked real outrage with her comments on the Me Too movement. During an interview, she questioned why actresses would agree to meet powerful men alone if they weren't attracted to them. She said, "If they're not really attractive, there's nothing to be gained from it, because it's obvious what you're indicating by going." Critics slammed her for victim blaming. Some called the remarks outdated and dangerous. Agutter explained she felt protected back then, thanks to being in a long-term relationship with a powerful man. She compared it to having the mafia behind her. She did admit that abuse of power was wrong, but the damage from her comments was already done. The backlash revealed a deep divide between generations and how differently people viewed safety, consent, and career survival in show business.